We are very pleased that you could all join us today for this session. My name is Catherine, and I am the coordinator of postdoctoral affairs and research training in the School of Graduate Studies. So thank you all so much for joining us, and a special thanks to Sara Laux, our expert presenter today, who is going to be talking about storytelling and the importance of storytelling, which is especially critical for GradFlix, but anytime that you're telling your research story, really. So Sara, thank you so much for joining us. I will be quietly in the background. If anyone has any questions, you can submit them to the chat and we will make sure that Sara does see that. So Sara, thank you so very much, and I'm turning it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you for coming, everyone. I'm going to share my screen because it would have probably been good if I had a video presentation, but I don't. It's just good old-fashioned PowerPoint, but let me just share. And go. Okay, can everybody see that? Participants can now see my screen. Awesome. Okay. So storytelling tips for GradFlix 2023. This is based on a presentation that I did last year, but it's been a bit adjusted. Anyway, a little bit about me, because I thought you should probably know my bona fides. So I know all about good stories because I've been working in communications for more than a decade. I've been doing content marketing. I trained as a journalist, but I've been doing content marketing and digital comms for, 15 years or so. So we know all about the importance of a good story in getting people engaged and getting people interested in whatever it is you're trying to say. But also when I'm not writing, I'm on stage. I do community musical theater and regular theater without music. And that is full of good stories. And so there are stories all around me all the time. And I love telling good stories, and I like letting other people know how best to tell good stories. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to talk to you a bit about presenting complex research. It can be interesting to try and boil your research down to a minute, because you're doing complicated things, and it can be sometimes a challenge to figure out what is it that's really important for people to know about what you're doing. So I have an example. Let's see if I can. Okay. I'm going to assume you can't see that. So let me just share my other screen. There we go. All right. So one of the best ways to, and Catherine, can you just let me know, can you see the video screen now?
We do see
okay.
interpreting
awesome.
a poem's main idea.
Yay! See, I tell stories. I'm not a tech person. And I'm just going to admit people as they come into the waiting room because I see it when it pops up. So anyway, one of the best ways to start with presenting your research is to tell a story or use an analogy, which is a great way of sort of getting people to relate to what it is you're trying to tell them. Everybody understands analogies. Everybody understands something that is a relatable situation. So I'm going to give you a little example, and I'm actually just going to make sure that I can share my sound. Ha ha ha. All right. So this is a really good example of how to use a story to introduce a concept. So take a look at this.
Imagine you've just stepped out of the movies. You and some buddies went to see the latest sequel in a superhero franchise. You spot another friend in line for tickets. She quickly asks you, "What was that movie about?" You tell her in your best movie trailer voice, "The hero faces incredible odds and inspires his city to join his fight against crime." With a snarky grin on her face, your friend says, "So what did you learn from this cinematic journey?" Unfazed, you fire back, "One motivated man can be the catalyst for change." Okay, So maybe you don't talk like this with your friends, but this imagined scene represents what your English teachers ask you to do. The first question, what was it about? That's one way of asking about the main idea. The second question, about the lesson of the piece, that's a way to ask about theme.
All right. And now I'm going to go back to the presentation. We're going to try and go back to the presentation. Let's see. Not what I want. Sorry, guys. I will be just a second. Okay.
No worries, Sarah.
All right, I stopped sharing for now. Okay, we're going to go back and back to the presentation. And yes, this is great. Participants, yes. Sorry, it's stuck on advanced sharing options. Okay.
Oh, there we go. We're back.
Okay. Can you see the advanced sharing options? That's currently on my screen.
No.
Okay, well, I can, but that's all right. Let me get back to the slide that we were on. All right, so that was an example of how to use an analogy to get into the ideas behind your research. Then what you need to do is figure out the so what. So why are you doing this research? What is the ultimate goal? And it doesn't matter if your particular area of the research doesn't have sort of a great outcome. If you're helping to, say, figure out something that will help people understand the world in a different way, or figure out something that will allow people to be healthier or use technology in a different way, that's okay. That's the end goal of the research that you are contributing to. That is your so what. So figure that out. What's cool about it? And how would you explain that coolness to your best friend or your grandmother or somebody who's not involved in the research that you're doing? You have to sort of, if you were explaining what you were doing to your neighbor across the fence in your backyard, how would you tell them what you're doing and what the impact of it is? Right? I will always say that when it's appropriate, and it isn't always, but when it's appropriate, use humor. It can often be, you know, a good way to sort of get people interested in what you're doing and make them feel like it's more relatable than it may otherwise be. So if you can make a joke, great. If you can't make a joke, then you can appeal to people's other emotions, like, you know, are you a hero or are you part of a team of heroes doing something that's heroic? That's a good thing too. And we'll get a little more into how to tell a really sticky story in a second. So a good way to kind of narrow your thinking is to figure out what your headline would be. You may not have a headline in your video, but it's a really good way of distilling what your research is all about. So I have an example here of a not so good headline, and this sounds like an academic paper. Remember that your minute video is not an academic paper, so this is not a good headline. So if you had the choice between grasshopper and locust farming as a sustainable source of protein for non-ruminant livestock and humans in Kenya, a much better headline is eating bugs, right? It gets you into the idea, and it also kind of makes somebody go, what is that? I want to find out more. So there's some really other easy beginnings that you can use to sort of distill your ideas down into good headlines. You can use questions. Who did kill Roger Rabbit? You can do an explainer, sort of how the West was won, how to lose a guy in 10 days, you know, 5 ways to improve the taste of your orange juice, that kind of thing. You can be a little bit audacious. This is not academic. This is getting people into the idea of your research. So this man will make you want to study stats. Really, I swear. And then something a little clickbaity. McMaster's new health physicist has a weird hobby. Just full disclosure, he collects radioactive glass, which is true. So that's a really good way to start thinking about your research in very, very simple terms. And some other sort of hints for, and you're probably listening to this and saying, okay, well, that's fine if I'm writing an article, but how do I present it visually? Well, here you go. You saw in my example video that they used very simple animations and started with an analogy or a story. So you can do exactly that in your own video. Some of the best GradFlix videos I've seen use the simplest animations in the world. And it's not the quality of the animation that's important. It's the story that they're telling and the fact that their information is relatable and people can go, oh, I get that. I can relate it to something in my real life. Feel free to use stock photos. There are lots of sources for stock photos. And I know, Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Colin did a presentation or is going to do a presentation on sort of the more technical aspects of creating videos. Is that right?
That is right. Lighting
Excellent.
and sound is coming up tomorrow on the 26th, unless we are on a snow day, and I will pop in at the end to give some details.
Awesome. All right. So you don't have to, if the idea of animation is sort of freezing you in your boots, that's okay. You can use a slideshow, you can use stock photos, you can use archival photos. So library sites can be a very good source of archival photos. Use visually appealing text. So Avatar notwithstanding, Papyrus is not your best choice for a font, and neither is Comic Sans unless you're being ironic. Pick something that is readable, that is visual, and that is easy to see. And sound is really important. So sound effects are super effective if you use them well. You know, if you've got water flowing, you can find sound effects on the internet. If you've got something popping out of a bottle, that's perfect. And music is also kind of a really good way. Just run it underneath your music. And again, you can find license-free music for free on the internet. The internet is your friend when it comes to creating these videos. All right. And then something else you probably is a really good idea is to plan it out. Like, don't just sort of sit in front of your computer and think, I'm going to animate something, or I'm going to, and I am gesturing with my hands and you can't see me, but that's okay. So the first thing to do is talk it out with someone, because the way sort of saying it out loud, saying your ideas out loud, talking to somebody about what the point is a really good way of sort of distilling down what the important points are of your research. And then from there, make a plan, draw a diagram, lay out a rough outline, doodle your little animations if you want. And then from there, kind of have a basic structure to how you want your narrative to proceed. Once you're done that, create a storyboard, which is a more detailed way of how you want your shots to look and how you want your animations or your photos to be in a much more sort of, not a rough plan, but sort of a specific plan from beginning to end. Write your script, but then read it out loud. And then you'll discover that sometimes writing does not sound the same as saying things out loud. And so you want to adjust your script so that it sounds natural when you read it out loud, so that it sounds like you're talking and not just reading a script. And because this is only a short video, you need to be ruthless in cutting everything that isn't necessary. In journalism, they call it kill your babies or kill your puppies. Don't do that, but you really do need to, even if you are absolutely in love with something, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. You need to cut it out. And, you know, you have to sometimes put aside some really, really good ideas because they're just not right for this particular presentation. Most writers I know have what they call a spill file, and they put, you know, good sentences that they love or good ideas that they like, and they keep it on their computer because they just haven't had a chance to use those ideas yet, but they know they're going to come at some point. So just because you cut it now doesn't mean you won't be able to use it in the future. All right. And there's something that I learned very early on in my career about what makes a message sticky, what makes it something that you remember a long time from now. And sticky things are like slogans. So something like good to the last drop. You know, we most of us know that slogan for Maxwell House because it was just so evocative of what a good cup of coffee should be. So to remember what makes a sticky message, something that sort of lives with people and stays in their heads and makes them think, wow, that's interesting. Remember the acronym SUCCES, and then not the second S. It's success spelled wrong. And this comes from a very good book called Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. So think about your message this way. You need to make it simple, right? We've talked about that. You have complex research, but you have to boil it down to the simplest terms possible. So focus and use plain words. Don't use the words that you would use in writing an academic paper. Just use regular words that you would use to talk to your neighbor with. Something unexpected. So surprise your reader. Make them go, oh, I didn't know that. Make them go, wow, I can't believe they started with that. There's nothing wrong with starting with something that's kind of a little bit, something along the lines of, and this may not work for everybody's presentation, but something like, what if I told you you could cure cancer in 30 minutes? Something like that. That's unexpected. You may not actually want to say exactly that, but that's an example. So something concrete. So show me, don't tell me. Don't say, I'm going to build a material that is, 20 times stronger than steel. Show me, say, this material can stop a bullet fired from 5 feet. Steel can't stop a bullet fired from 20 feet, something along those lines, but concrete examples to let me know, okay, I can hook my brain onto this idea. And give me facts and sources and authority. Be credible, and you are all credible because you are all the researchers who are doing this research. But stats and sort of numbers can really, not too many, but can really bring a source of credibility to your message. And then emotional. So we talked about humor, but if you need to make people sad, make them sad, or make them sort of scared and then tell them how they're not going to be scared anymore. And then story driven. So we talked about that. So people love stories. We saw that at the beginning of the video that I showed you. Draw them in. What does a story have? It has a hero. It has tension. It has the resolution of tension. And we have loved stories as long as we've been able to sit around a campfire and tell ghost stories to each other. So stories are important. And so think about what the story of your research is. What is the narrative? What's the beginning, the middle, and the end? Who's the hero? What's the tension? What's the outcome going to be? And then I have a couple of examples that I think are useful to see, and these are taken from the University of Oxford, which has done a really good job of putting, and these are social sciences and humanities research examples, because sometimes it's easier when you're in health sciences or engineering, it's a little easier to sort of focus on what the impact of your work is. In social sciences and humanities, it isn't always as cut and dry. So I am going to share as soon as I figure out how to do that. I did this last time. I'm not sure how. It's so difficult the second time. Let's see. Well, we'll stop the share. And we'll go to... There we go. All right. So this is from the University of Oxford. And this is one example of a really nice way of presenting research in a way that's relatable and story-driven and also very, very simple. So I'm going to hit play. Actually, I'm going to make sure my sound is still shared. Yeah, okay, good.
Most armed conflict is not about states locked in war, with the number of soldiers left all that matters. Often the groups that make the difference between war and peace don't fit this picture. To understand these forces, Oxford's conflict platform and ConPeace teams use everything they can, including photographs, interviews and focus groups, army doctrines and historical battle data, and forums and workshops to investigate how and why conflicts change over time and how societies can move towards lasting peace. Governments and international agencies often contact the teams to learn about their findings, and the UN has updated its guidance on non-state armed groups to reflect the new knowledge. It also informed the Colombian government strategy around its peace agreement with the FARC in 2016. Social science might be about qualitative and quantitative data, but it's also about saving lives.
So one very good example. Let's see. Okay, so that was one example, and I have one more example, and then we can open the floor to questions. This is also from the University of Oxford. And here we go.
A lot of important information has been carved in stone over the years, but a lot of it is difficult to read because it's written in ancient languages, it's been damaged by the elements or by people, or it's just really hard to move around. For 2 decades, an Oxford academic has been studying ancient Sicily, working with local museums to record, translate and display over 4,000 items in an online stone library. This needs more than just one person, so Sicilian schoolchildren have been involved as citizen scientists, locating, cleaning and photographing objects, and even developing an exhibition in a local museum. So check out the fascinating history of this hotly contested island on your computer, or perhaps more appropriately, a tablet.
Haha. And that was a very good example of just a little bit of humor. So that's the end of the sort of the formal part of my presentation, but I would be happy to answer questions. And whoops, hold a second. Sorry, I have a YouTube playing in my ears, but if anybody has questions, comments, I'd be happy to open the floor.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And absolutely, if anyone would like, you can unmute yourself and you can ask a question, or you can pop it in the chat if you'd like us to moderate. That was absolutely fantastic. While we wait for folks to maybe distill their questions, I'm wondering about the statistics and numbers and things. How does someone decide how much is just enough so that we can have that appeal to authority, but not, make our audience fall asleep because we've turned into, number roll call? What advice would you have on that?
I would say try and boil it down to the one statistic you want people to know. So what's the one thing that you could tell your neighbor across the back fence that's going to make them go, oh, okay, that's a really good illustration of what you're talking about. So, it's tough because you want to sort of back everything you up with numbers, but in this kind of context, words are probably more impactful. So I would say, boil it down, 1 or 2 stats at most, and make sure they're the ones that are going to be the ones that make people go, oh, now I get it. I do actually see a couple of questions. So there's one, do you know of a specific website that has license-free music for free? I don't know of one offhand, but you can Google them and they are everywhere. So, free stock music, just Google that and you should be able to find stuff from there. Let's see. Somebody's asked about the archaeology. If you check to see, Oxford University is where I got those 2 videos that I provided. So if you Google, I think Oxford University, it's either research shorts or research videos, you may be able to find more that are related to archaeology from there. Yes, and Creative Commons is a great place for license-free music, license-free photos. Flickr has an entire, collection of photos that you can use without attribution for free. So, and I think I saw a couple of hands up, potentially. Maybe not.
I saw quite a lot of applause, actually.
Okay, well, that's nice. I'm a theater person. Applause is always nice.
Absolutely. A couple of other questions that I have. So when someone's trying to figure out their story, and they only have a minute, what would be the basic thinking that you might encourage someone to be kind of looking at telling a story. I know I like to set up the context, and I could take like an entire minute just to make sure you've got the background right, before I tell you my story.
Mm-hmm. I would say figure out your ending first. Like a murder mystery writer is always going to know kind of who done it before they start writing. And so what's the final message that you want to leave people with? What is the ultimate impact of the research that you're doing or that you're helping to contribute to? And once you have that, then you can sort of, lead up to that. And also, what problems are you trying to solve? And this doesn't just go for engineering and health sciences. If you're doing, well, archaeology for one thing, the problem that you're trying to solve is that there are some things that people don't know about. And so how are you contributing to knowledge, and what will this knowledge tell us, and what's the impact of that knowledge down the road? So I think if you think about it in terms of an actual story, so, we have, all stories involve a hero of some sort, and this hero is trying to solve a problem, and they run into problems along the way, and they eventually help to resolve their problem. And sort of what's the resolution of that tension? What's your tension? What's the resolution of that tension? And I think that will probably help you get from point A to point B without overloading the beginning with context. Have the ending in mind first.
I love that. That is so good. That's super perfect. Other questions? Does anyone have any additional questions for Sara? Because this has been awesome.
Fairly quick, I know, but
quick. It's a 1 minute GradFlix.
Well, there we go.
There you go. You have been on point and economical. All right. Well, if we don't have more questions for Sara, I'm going to give you guys some awesome info. Sara has agreed to do a little bit of feedback for us coming up in February. So potentially you have to get that on the schedule, but you might be able to book a time with Sara to get some feedback from her. So, definitely take this advice to heart because she knows what she's talking about, very much so. And make sure that you are registering for our other upcoming GradFlix workshops. So we have lighting and sound scheduled for tomorrow. And we have another workshop on giving a persuasive presentation. In the event of a snow day, if you happen to be scheduled for those, if we are hit by a snow day, we will reschedule them all. So that will be the way that we roll tomorrow. We'll be playing it by ear according to the weather. Even though it's online, if the university closes, we will have to reschedule. And for upcoming, if you have any questions about your GradFlix, about eligibility, about things you can or can't do, or judging, or anything else, please do use our contact form that goes to me. And I will give you that information and also help connect you with any folks. Okay, we have a question from Dugu. I know you said it's better to start thinking of the ending first and then the hero of the story. I'm still thinking if it's a good practice to introduce ourselves very short, even if we're not the hero of that story.
Yeah, because you're presenting the research and you are kind of the hero of the story. But yes, I think it's a very good idea to introduce yourself because we want to know who you are and what you do. And we want to, your audience is always going to want to form a personal connection with you and with your story. This is your story. This is your research. So yes, I would say definitely introduce yourself. And I put the link to the Oxford impact videos in the chat. And these are these are not personal presentations. These are just sort of ways to present research by telling a story. But yes, I absolutely think that that it is important to introduce yourself.
Perfect. And if you, and when you do that, remember, like, it's a 60-second video, but do.
Right. Keep it short,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
put it in text. But
That too.
That will work as well. And I don't know, Catherine, that's not a requirement, is it? That
No, it
people
is
introduce
not.
themselves? Okay.
So yeah, so normally where this has come through with 3-minute thesis, it was kind of a patter, if you will. I mean, people had 3 minutes and they would give an opening spiel, and then they would say something like, my name is so-and-so, and I researched this thing in this lab. But when you only have 60 seconds, that might not necessarily be oh, yes. I was just reading the comment from Dugo. I'm thinking my methodology is the hero of my research, and I'll keep my personal intro short. Yes, I remember this came up at another workshop, and I'm very excited for this because we have never had a GradFlix about the research methodology.
Okay.
And I'm making all these great hand gestures of excitement that you can't see because my camera is not
I'll
working.
do it for you.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. We're very excited. We have John Bandler with us, who is one of our amazing volunteers who has been a presentation coach for our students over the years in both 3MT and GradFlix. Oh, there you are, John. So thanks for joining us very much, John.
Yeah, sorry, I was a bit late jumping on here, and so I just got the tail end of your presentation, Sarah. But I did hear that comment about opening line, closing line. I always suggest write your opening line first, then find a closing line that bookends it. Write the opening line, write the actual closing line, because the closing line, in a way, would echo the opening. The opening, you're introducing the hero, yourself, or the subject, or the importance of the subject, or the problem that you're trying to solve. And the closing line should indicate: is it solved? What's the hero? What is the hero doing now? Etc. So opening line, closing line, and then I would also recommend, don't put too many words in there. Keep it. I would always recommend. I would say 120 words per minute. So have a minute. I wouldn't go over 120 words. So that's the opening line, closing line, and then making sure you don't write more than about 120 words.
Wow. 120 words. Sarah's nodding.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely, because you don't want to fill your minute with just talking. If you boil it, 120 words, you have to distill it down to the the core of your message. So yeah, I think that's great advice.
That's about a half a page.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I looked at Anna Marinka's winning GradFlix presentation from Waterloo over a couple of years ago. She clocked in at 160 words. And it was a voiceover, but she was an incredibly clear, very clear and precise speaker. But I think many students might have a problem being understood and being articulate and being very clear. So unless you're super clear, don't go over 120 minutes, because you have to speak really fast. And speaking really fast gives the impression of what is the word?
An auctioneer.
Desperation, and you don't want to sound desperate.
No, we don't. And I think this is a great point, John, and it brings me back to something that we've said about the judging, that the technical score, which will be 20% of your overall score, will be based on clarity of visuals. So can we see what you're trying to share with us and understand what it is? So are your visuals clear? Which can also be impacted by your lighting. That's why call-in session is so important. But also your audio. Is your audio clear? That includes if you are speaking too quickly. If we cannot actually follow along with what it is that is being said, we're not getting your message. So those are great reminders, to keep as you're working through your script and your video recording as well.
I would say from a voice point of view, so along with being a writer and a theater person, I also have a Bachelor of Music, and I was a voice major. And it's very, you have to get very comfortable with listening to yourself being recorded. So you can listen back to if you choose to do a voiceover, you need to listen to that voiceover and you got to swallow your discomfort with hearing your voice, because it's not going to sound the way you think it does, and that's okay. But also it's important to breathe deeply and speak, as John said, clearly. And we need to be able to hear every word and speak with more deliberation and enunciation than you think you might need. But it's very important to breathe as you speak. And I could talk for a long time about voice production, but that's probably my best advice that way.
That's fantastic advice. And there's actually a workshop that Model is delivering next week on using your voice effectively. So that is a great tie in there, Sarah, so that everyone can, it's aimed at folks who are English language learners. But the point is well taken that, we need to be thinking about our breathing and our voice delivery. So, so much to think about, but don't be scared, everyone. You can do this. If you're looking, there are, of course, the tremendous Oxford videos as well, but take a look at last year's top 10 GradFlix videos that are on the Grad Studies website. There's a link to them, and watch those, and you'll see a diversity of approaches. So you should find some that are giving you ideas or things that kind of pique your curiosity about maybe their style or however they did it, and use that to your advantage and ask questions. Which brings me to a last call. If anyone has some questions for Sarah, who has done an amazing job and given us such great advice, which I'm still loving, start with the ending in mind. So John, I think you might have missed it when Sarah had said that. That was one of her big pieces, is start with the ending. And then figure out, what it is that you want your audience to know. So you two are right in sync with that. It's perfect. Love having both two of our awesome experts, right in line and not even knowing it. So, all right, well, with that, we super appreciate everyone coming out, and we are going to give you that amazing gift that we can only give every once in a while, and that is the gift of time. So you get an extra 17 minutes back into your day. Thank you all for coming out. Again, on behalf of the School of Graduate Studies, please do keep in touch with us on your GradFlix journey. Register if you haven't yet registered your intent to submit, because that will give us a lovely email list so that we can send you exclusive info in the month of February as we're going along. And if you have any questions, reach out to us via that contact form.